Hello everybody and welcome back to the Garibaldi Red podcast, a Nottingham Forest podcast. It is time for our big season preview as Forest are just 3 days away from the start of the 2024 to 2025 Premier League season. It has come round quick, hasn't it? The Reds in their third season competing and hoping for success again, and this time under Nuno Espirito Santo, as he has a full pre-season with the players, a positive pre-season, some would argue as well, with many signings, not that many, but some good signings for Forest, and almost a good off-the-pitch recruitment, shall we say, to discuss all of that and our predictions for this season, which will no doubt come back to bite us. Joined first of all by Reds fan and, of course, podcast regular, Dave Astbury. Dave, good to have you back. You are fresh into new life as a PT. So from everyone at the podcast, congrats. How's it going, mate? How are you?
Well, it's early days and there's been a lot to take in, Max, but it's going all right. Folks I work with are great. Members are fantastic. A lot to learn, but, you know, it's good. It's good. I'm enjoying it. I feel great. I feel physically great and, you know, kind of mentally great. It's been a tough few months, but we're moving forward, mate. And so, yeah, it's good. And it's good to be back on here with you and Steve, mate.
Yes, good stuff. Also joining us, of course, Steve Bennett, Forest fan, board member of the Forest Supporters Trust. Steve, how are you? Are you ready for the big season preview?
I am. Yeah, I am. No, I'm good, thanks, Max. And had a pretty good summer so far. Went to the Euros, as you know, and witnessed some good stuff and some not so good stuff. It was all going great until the last 10 minutes. But yeah, and in anticipation of your first question, I'm pretty excited about the new season, to be honest.
Good. That's good to know. Let's start with you, actually, then, Steve. And I suppose not just maybe on the season ahead, but what's been a positive pre-season, a lot of Forest fans would argue. You know, we've had many debates on here on the podcast before about the recruitment not being right and certain signings and everything like that. But it seems to be going in the right direction. Would you agree?
I would. And it seems to me that the third season opens up all sorts of opportunities that the club now have that experience of the first 2 years. They know more about what they're doing and what to expect and can therefore plan accordingly. So it seems to have been a pre-season without any major drama, without any major sort of difficulties or issues. A good pre-season for Nuno and his players. They've spent a lot of time together, and that's got to be good for team building and that sort of stuff. Some good additions, some good stuff going on off the pitch. So, yeah, I mean, it all seems to me pretty professional and pretty optimistic.
Dave, would you agree there? And I think for so many years we wanted Forest to almost stay out the limelight, if you like, in a way, during the off season, and just have quite a steady one and almost build on what was ultimately, in the end, a positive end to last season. Nuno's had a full pre-season with the players as well now. That's got to help. And you look at the videos that Forest have been putting out and all the social media stuff that's come our way. And yes, people might argue it's a bit of positive PR there, but in the same way, everyone looks happy and everyone looks like they're willing to play for Nottingham Forest and kickstart the season well, really.
Yeah, you know what, Max? I think it's been our best 3 months since we were promoted. I've been really, really encouraged by what I've seen. In regards to pre-season, to me, the two priorities have been observed. The first was to avoid any more points deductions, and I thought that was very cannily dealt with. And our lads, bless them all, have all come through without any major injuries. And they're all good to go for what really matters on Saturday afternoon at 3:00 when we have to go and lay a bogey, because they are a bogey side. I've been really encouraged, actually. It's had you're absolutely right, Max. It's kind of going against the great Oscar Wilde. But it's actually been better for Forest not to be talked about than talked about, really. And I've been really quietly encouraged. My big worry at the end of the season was I do not want another points deduction. And the transfer business, which I think we'll come on to talk to later, has dealt with that really, really well. There's a sense of everything feels settled. The tumble dryer seems to have stopped whirring, and I really like what I've seen. I've watched most of the matches, and I like the kind of football we've produced. I mean, I know it's unwise to really pay any heed to the results you get in pre-season, but from the opening pre-season game at Chesterfield, where I look at the last 2 pre-seasons, and we've played sort of lower league opposition, and it's been a struggle at times to see whether Forest or the other team are the Premier League side. This time it's been really clear. I think we are evolving. At Chesterfield, if it had not been for young Ryan Boo, a local lad to Toxictor in goal for Chesterfield, it could have been double figures. Against Sunderland, should have won. Against Millwall, despite being assaulted most of the night, won the game. Should have beaten Elche all over them apart from that one shot. And then to go to the Europa League winners, win 4-3 on their ground, 4-1 up at one point. That, to me, well, I'm not getting carried away, and often a good pre-season presages a poor season. We've all been there. It's been really encouraging. And as you say, Max, it's a really good point you raised, mate. They all look happy. They all look like they're singing off the same hymn sheet. It just has a feeling of being settled, mate. And I'm cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, me too. Steve, let's talk a little bit about the transfers, and obviously we've done many episodes in the past, so we're not going to go through and rank our transfers from top to bottom, but there have been some good additions. You look at kind of recently Jota Silva, there's many more linked for Forest. You look at Milenkovic now coming in to pair up with Murillo. There have been almost well thought out signings rather than just going for that kind of mad approach of signing, so many players that might not fit Forest recruitment style, if you like.
Yeah, I think it looks planned. We don't know, do we? We're just punters, but it strikes me from the way that they've gone about it is they've had a plan. They've known where they want to strengthen in certain areas of the pitch, and they've gone out and got players to do that. Whether who they've brought in has been first choice, we'll never ever know. But Milenkovic fills a very important gap and comes with a great record and great statistics. And then behind him, and I'm assuming that he will play, then behind him you've got, a stalwart, for want of a better term, in Willy Bolly. So either of those could play with Murillo and shore up Murillo's weaknesses, of which there are some, because he's short and he's not good in the air. And that's always going to be exposed in something like the Premier League. We've brought cover in for Elanga and Hudson-Odoi, which I think is crucial. And I'm sure there will be other gaps that they still want to fill. I think it's great so far. The only area I have a slight concern of is a striker, a third striker. Awoniyi and Wood can both do a job, and if they stay fit, can do a really, really good job. But as we saw last year, Awoniyi was injured. Then everything relied on Chris Wood. Goodness me, what a fantastic season he had. But if he struggled or needed to be replaced for something else, and you needed to change the tone of the game, then you need somebody else to bring in. So for me, that's really the only crucial area. If we didn't continue to strengthen in other areas, I think we're covered.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I agree. Right, let's get into some season predictions, and we will start really with we do. And they might come back to bite us towards the end, but you never know. In fact, we didn't do them last year because I wasn't hosting the podcast, so it's the first season of doing them. So looking forward to be shown up. We'll start with the number one question, really, before we kick off into some more in-depth ones. And Dave, if you want to kick us off with this one, it's plain and simple, really. What is your definition of success for Forest this season?
Not to be involved in a relegation dogfight, Max, to be honest. To be comfortable or more comfortable and move some places up the table, whether that's one place, two places, three places, four places. So I just think a modicum of comfort and clear evidence of progression would be great. Steve, everything I've heard Steve say in the last 10 or so minutes, I wholeheartedly agree with. Everything in terms of transfers, I like what we've done in terms of transfers. I agree. Another striker is to me an essential. But I'm sure Forest will address that. There's been joined up thinking. It seems to me some common sense has finally broken out. Whether that's Ross Wilson or other members of staff behind the scenes, it just feels like there's a level of control there and a level of process having taken place. So I've been thinking about us, and I go back a season to this time last year, and I remember being on a lot of podcasts, and at the time, Lopetegui had left. They had PSR issues. They didn't look as if they'd signed anybody, and so many people had Wolverhampton Wanderers in the bottom three, or in real danger. Wolverhampton Wanderers was safe 7 or 8 games from the end of the season, which I think was a fantastic effort by Wolves and by Gary O'Neill. And I have a feeling that we will do a similar thing this year. I just like the look of us, the chemistry. Sometimes there's a sight test, a field test, just a sense that Forest are better. May not be a great amount, better than they were. And I just think, we're going to surprise a few. I really do. I think it's not you look at other clubs. Chelsea are just buying anything that moves. There are old ladies shopping in the high street here who've just moved and Chelsea have signed them. It's ridiculous, right? With Forest, honestly, there's a fella gone in the pharmacy across the road and Todd Bowley's outside trying to sign him. It's ridiculous, right? Childish, nonsensical. Forest appear to have some kind of calm approach now, and like Steve says, planning. And I think we'll surprise a few. I think we'll be in the bottom half. I think we'll be nearer to the bottom than to the top. But I just think there's a sense that it's gradually, incrementally evolving. I always said last 2 seasons that my touchdown with Brighton and Hove Albion, Brighton, when they came up, struggled like hell for the first 2 or 3 seasons. And all of a sudden, kind of like without anybody really noticing, whether it's like osmosis or whatever, organically, Brighton became an established Premier League team. And I've always hoped that Forest would follow a similar trajectory. And what I've seen in pre-season, which actually, let's remember, it's not the acid test as it will be from Saturday onwards, Forest give off some vibes that they kind of getting to know a little bit more about what they're doing. So to me, success is not being in that relegation scrap and being a little bit closer to the top, or a bit further away from the bottom than they were last season, Max.
What's your definition of success for Forest this season, Steve? Do you agree there pretty much with Dave?
Yeah, I think it's similar, Max. I think you can look at the Premier League in 3 areas. There's the top 6, maybe 7 or 8, because some club always has a breakup through season. Then there's, you can roughly divide it in 3 sixes, and I know 3 sixes don't make 20, but you know what I mean by that. So there's that top group. They're going to be battling for Europe, battling for the league, the Man Cities, the Arsenals, etc. Then there's a middle group of well-established clubs in the Premier League, got lots of experience. They know what they're doing, but also because of that, they've built up squads over a number of years. All of those players, unless they bring in new ones, are experienced at playing in the Premier League. Then there's the bottom 6 or 7, which includes the 3 teams that come up, and it's going to include us and perhaps this year Brentford and Bournemouth, and I don't know, it might be Wolves. It might again include Everton. I'm not sure that West Ham. I know they've made some big signings, but we know how difficult it is to integrate 8 or 9 players that all come in a few weeks before the new season, along with the new manager and everything else. So I think there's a group of about 6 or 7 teams who are that bottom third. If we could finish first or second in that bottom 6 or 7, then and then that's real progress. And I think, as Dave says, there will be a couple of times in the season when we'll get stuffed because we'll be exposed as being an early experienced Premier League side. But I think equally a couple of times in the season where we'll surprise a few teams. And I don't think it completely and utterly depends on our home performance. I think just as a team, what I like is the fact that we've kept a really strong, we've kept our core.
Absolutely.
Like in any business, in any organization, it's all about relationships. It's all about how you work with people and knowing that if you make a move, what the other person's going to run. If you do this, how the other person's going to respond. And you only get that through time. So we've got 7, 8, 9 players who have now played with each other for a season. So this is their second season. They know how they play with each other. They appear from the videos to get on. There doesn't appear to be any leaks coming out of the squad about, arguments and battles and disagreements. It looks like a happy camp. And for me, and I've talked about this before, that team culture, the ability to get on and play with each other and welcome other people in is absolutely fundamental. And that's what we seem to have this year. So for me, success will be, I don't know, where is it? 13th, 14th, 15th, perhaps. But having to be aware of what's going on below us, but knowing that we have the confidence to rise above it. And you never know, with a couple of interesting results, then we might be challenging for 13th instead of challenging for 15th. So that's my sort of sitting here now at the beginning of the season. I think a lot of it for me depends on Saturday. If we can win on Saturday, not only does it put that marker down that we know how to win, it starts off, it builds the confidence. And Saturday is a 6-pointer. I mean, it sounds ridiculous to say that, but if you can take points off Bournemouth instead of giving 3 points to Bournemouth as we have done in the last couple of seasons, then you're already ahead of the game of where we were the last couple of years. Yeah.
And actually, can I also say, I mean, success to me would be a run in the Carabao or a run in the FA Cup would be nice as well. Because I remember, if you think the season we promoted, the cup run that year that culminated with that, narrow loss to Liverpool, did so much on and off the field for the club. It was kind of like a springboard for where we are now. So I think that would be good. But I agree with Steve totally.
Yeah, and I agree with both of you. I've got nothing more to add. And I think as well, Dave, you mentioned the cup run there. It was interesting. I often think with the Carabao Cup or even the FA Cup, when teams just don't look bothered and do field, shall we say, lesser quality squads or potentially, the youth. I just feel like, in football, you want to keep the team happy. You want to keep winning games to ultimately breed that success mentality. And I think for Forest, if they can have a good cup run, it almost transfers into the league, as you mentioned as well, Dave. It did exactly that when Forest went up, obviously, under Steve Cooper that season. So there we go. Right, on to this next question. If you're picking a best Forest 11, who is a certain starter? So for one, a player that would absolutely start every game. I mean, I can assume maybe that there's going to be a lot of shouts, but we won't do all of the starters and who we think is going to start against Bournemouth. We haven't simply got time for that. We might be here a while. But Steve, who would be your number one player every game for this season? That if you were Forest manager, if you had that chance, you play 6 aside, but if you went into coaching, who would you be picking every single game to play for Forest?
Gibbs White.
Plain and simple.
He nicked my answer. He's so clever, this fella. All the way straight out of Allsager, and he's nicked my answer. I think, actually, just harking back on the point that the three of us have settled on earlier, in that there's a core there. And we're not, now we're into tweaks rather than overhauls as we have like the last 2 seasons. I wrote down, who did I put? I wrote a list, so I got obviously Morgan, because Morgan now, to me, if you go back to, there's been a change in the club, a progression. A couple of years ago, Nottingham Forest revolved around Joe Worrell. Now, from all the media content I've seen and just a general feeling around the club, the quarterback, the main man, the player that supporters of other clubs now associate with Nottingham Forest. You say to a supporters of other clubs, name a Forest player, they say Morgan Gibbs-White. So he's kind of like our poster boy. So he's the first name on the team sheet every time. He's captain. He's the guy with the X factor. He's the guy who's delivered on his feet, right? But I would add to that, I think Murillo, I mean, to me, a good pre-season was avoiding a points deduction and keeping Morg and keeping Murillo, right? We know he can't help being as small as he is and not taller and all this, but he's a fantastic work in progress. He's not the end product yet, but what a player and what a character. Yeah. And he's a cult hero already. So I think Murillo plays. Milenkovic, I watched the Villarreal friendly, and at the end of it, if anybody said to me, how did you think Milenkovic played? I kind of thought, well, I didn't really notice him. But which meant to me he had a really good game. He's as solid as they come. I just look at that and I think I'd like to hope, whether I can guarantee it, that we'll be better in defending set pieces with Milenkovic there. And hopefully if Willie stays fit this season. Steve makes a really good point about Willie. I think Willie's our best tackler. Even if he does get sent off for incredible tackles, Willie does that. So Milenkovic, at the moment, Matt sells, unless somebody else comes in. I know there are people who don't rate sells and all that, but to my way of thinking, he's the best of what we have at the moment. Maybe another goalkeeper will come in. I don't know. Aina, I mean, if you can skin Carl Walker and have everybody in the country talking about it, and he is the funniest guy who's ever played for Nottingham Forest. He's constantly happy.
Because I think if I was going to go down the list after Gibbs-White, Hudson-Odoi, Langer, Milenkovic, Matt Sells. Yeah. So you've got a really interesting spine and that front three. The interesting one for me is having paid, not really, but having paid 35 million for him, is where does Anderson fit in? Because I haven't seen the pre-season friendlies day for a variety of reasons, and I couldn't get to the Villarreal game, but Anderson seems to be getting some really good plaudits, and he was clearly a loss to Newcastle, and lots of the Newcastle fans have been really complimentary about him. And you don't pay, I mean, allowing for the fact that the numbers were probably higher than we might have expected for reasons of PSR on both sides, you don't pay that sort of money for a player to have him sitting on the bench. Now, he gives us a choice with Gibbs-White, and hopefully that takes the pressure off Morgan to think, blimey, I've got to perform, and even if I've got a bit of a knock, I've got to stay on the pitch because there is somebody who can come in and do a job. But that for me is the really intriguing one. And you haven't mentioned Sangare, who, according to all the reports, has had a really good pre-season, looks fit, looks the player we bought. So I think it's fascinating, Max, in that probably certainly for the first time for 3 years, we've got a really strong core of maybe 6, 7, 8 players that you're going to go, right, that's the core of the team. Now it's who do we fit in around them? So I'm not sure, is he going to go with Williams and Aina at nominally right and left back? But then, the new signing, Eric Moreira, has had some great plaudits. So where does he fit in? And he's been highly regarded before. For me, I would put a 1 year in up front if he's fit. But so it's and I know you don't want the conversation to go on for long, Max, but we are in a fascinating situation for the first time in 3 years, in that there's a number of players that you can go, they'll be on the team sheet. But coming back
we're not experimenting across the board this time like we have been the last 2 seasons. We've got that solid, familiar platform, and we can. I mean, I have seen all bar one of the pre-season games, I think, and Sangare has looked a different person. And I love a redemption story written off by. I thought the more people wrote him off last season, the better he'll be this season. Maybe I'm like shouting into the wind, but he looks free of malaria, free of AFCON. And he still has to get up to the pace of the Premier League. But what I've seen in pre-season is encouraging. Elliot Anderson came on against Villarreal, and first 5 minutes, blimey, this kid looks sharp. His free kicks against Olympiacos were great. So he contributed to a couple of the goals in Greece. He looks versatile, and as you said, Newcastle didn't want to let him go, which is you know, a character reference in itself. So I think we're looking at better.
David, I'll tell you what's fascinating. In none of the last few minutes have either of us mentioned yet Brian Yates.
Yeah, and he's done great. You know, much to the annoyance of many who want him to fail and want him to be cast aside. The kid finds new levels all the time. When Roy Keane comes into a club and picks you out and said, this guy's special, I'd rather listen to Roy Keane about Ryan Yates than Keyboard Warriors, you know. So I love the guy. He's such a good lad. And, you know, whether he's on the bench or he's on the pitch, you know, you're going to get 100%. He's a bit scruffy in his play at times, but nobody's more Nottingham Forest now than him.
Yes, we were called the Ryan Yates Love Podcast the other day. I saw a comment, but I'd rather be the Ryan Yates Love Podcast than Ryan Yates Hate Podcast because he does the job for Forest, and you know. I mean, it says a lot when we have so many different contributors on the podcast, and a lot of the time they will all praise Yates. We hardly ever really have criticism for him. Not that he's immune from it, but that's just the way it goes. Right, let's move on, and we go to our top goal scorer. Dave, I'll chip in for this one at the end, but Dave, if you want to go with your top goal scorer prediction for Forest this season.
Woody. I think Woody again. You know, unless Tyrone stays fit, and then it may be Tyrone, because I take Steve's point actually, but Chris Wood for me, man. Yeah,
I'll go with Tyrone actually. I think again, obviously if he stays fit, but let's assume that he does. I think Tyrone's going to start more. I think he's suited probably more a little bit for Forest style of play at times. Nothing against Chris Wood. I think Tyrone will be the top goal scorer for Forest. Steve, what's your take?
If he stays fit, I think Taiwo. I think he's got something to prove. And I think he's the sort of, if you look at his back history, he's constantly been proving himself throughout his life. So this is another challenge for him. I hope he stays fit, because I think his link up with Alanga and Hudson-Odoi and Gibbs-White can be really, really special. I also think we're very fortunate to have a player like Chris Wood, who is an absolute professional. And therefore, if Taiwo's on the pitch and Chris Wood is on the bench, that's a much easier situation to manage for Nuno than the other way around. Chris Wood will understand that, and he'll still come on and he'll still contribute and he'll still score goals, and he'll be respected by the players and the fans, and he'll do a great job. But for me, if he's fit, Taiwo.
What do you think the turning point was, just quickly, Steve, for Chris Wood? Because, you know, last season there was a lot of criticism that came his way. Even I was one that, you know, criticised him at times. But it seemed like the changeover of manager helped. When Nuno came in, do you think he almost played to Chris Wood's strengths in a way?
I think it was two things. I think the change of manager perhaps had a factor, but I think more importantly, when Taiwo got injured, and the manager will have turned around to Chris Wood and gone, right, you are it. You're going to get a run of games. We need to play to your strengths, because your competition isn't going to be available. So we're going to have to rely on you. And, you know, if you think of, we've all been through it, a working environment. If your line manager says to you, I believe you, this is what I want you to do, and you're going to be able to do it for the next number of weeks, number of months, you go, that's good. The manager's got confidence in me. I can go and deliver. So Chris Wood's always been a striker. He's never been a superstar, and he never will be, but he's a great professional footballer. And I just think it was that belief that was given to him, and the opportunity, sadly, because Taiwo was injured.
There was another turning point for Chris Wood as well, without being too sentimental and close to home. My old man, even when Woody was having a tough time at Forest, my old man said, as Steve has just alluded to, this guy's a good centre forward. Wherever he's been, Burnley, Leeds, Newcastle, he's scored goals. You know, and I was one of those who doubted whether Woody kind of was into the twilight of his career. But my dad was always insisting, he'll come good, son. He's a good centre forward, that lad. And actually, from the moment my dad passed away, Woody took off. I mean, honestly, maybe old Raz is up there helping Woody out. You know what I mean? Will any of us ever forget Boxing Day at Newcastle? I will.
Yeah, I mean,
Wonderful.
exceptional.
Yeah, unbelievable game. Yeah. Right, from goals to assists, and we go with our prediction for most assists this season. Steve, you can have this one and start. I can kind of maybe guess your answer.
Do you know? I think it's really this is the one I struggled with most in all of the homework you set us, because it's about who plays. I mean, the obvious one is Gibbs White, but as Dave's made the point, Anderson's free kicks, Anderson's corners, Anderson's set piece play might result in goals from corners, might result in goals from free kicks, and therefore that, in a sense, is more predictable. Is it going to be somebody else from midfield whilst Gibbs White is given a free and floating role, which maximises his opportunity? Are we going to get more goals from both wings, from both Hudson-Odoi and Elanga? So the obvious one, I think, is Gibbs White, but I don't say that with 100% confidence, but that's not because I doubt his ability. I just think as a team, it's a bit like going through the goal scorer one. A one is the obvious one, but I think this year goals will and can come from all over the pitch. I can't wait, and I really hope I'm there whenever it happens, for Murillo to score his first screamer from about 40 yards into the top corner. Because everybody in the ground will go absolutely mad. And it's going to happen eventually, isn't it? I just hope it's this season, and we get the privilege of witnessing it. So the obvious one is Gibbs White, but only just, and I, the more I think about it, the harder it is to actually predict that one.
Yeah. I agree. I also think, just from watching pre-season, as he did towards the tail end of last season as well, Anthony Elanga looks bright, in particular, crossing, and you look at Forest, particularly from almost the wing and the wide areas where Forest have needed to capitalise in the past in the Premier League, and can play to their strengths with two fantastic players there in Hudson-Odoi and Elanga. So maybe they'll come from there, but I do think Morgan Gibbs White is probably the likely one for most assists. Do you agree, Dave? You got anything to add there?
There's a couple of points to add to what Steve said. Steve's put the meat there. I'm just going a little bit of topping on it. If you look at the assists statistics of last year, when we were struggling for most of the season, Gibbs White and Elanga were in the top 20 throughout the Premier League for assists. So Steve's dead right. Morgan is the clear and obvious candidate because he's the one who probably have most of the ball. He's the quarterback, right? But Anthony Elanga chipped in with a lot of, with a good number of assists last year. And if Anthony can find greater consistency, and he's hinted at it in pre-season, then Anthony could be a real source of other stuff, and Elliot Anderson as well. On the subject of Murillo, if eventually he shoots from Edinburgh and it goes in the back of the net at the City Ground, right? The only thing I can think of that will be anywhere near it to rival it for the impact it'll have on the City Ground is that day back all those years ago against Luton, I think on New Year's Day, when Desmond Walker scored his only goal for Nottingham Forest, and I was there, and the whole ground went berserk. So I've got previous with it, but if Murillo scores, and I just hope he feels he has the same confidence and freedom of expression to try it. Whether it was at Luton or Tottenham last year, they were just audacious beyond belief. So those Murillo's goal, I think, is something I think we're all looking forward to, and it will come.
Yeah, when it does happen, we'll get you both on the podcast. You can do the. You can do
I'll need to lie down.
Yeah, we'll do like an award for Murillo finally scoring one. Right, player of the season for Forest. Probably the biggest one we might predict, really. Dave, kick us off.
Well, again, if he's going to have most of the ball and he's going to be the guy, because I think that's what he is and that's what he's becoming, it's going to be Morgan. But I would really like it if Malenkovic got it, because that would back up, what a good signing he appears to be at the moment. The sentimental one for me is I would love Ibrahim Sangare. to be Player of the Year and shut everybody up. Ryan Yates to be Player of the Year would be great. That would shut a lot of people up. Elliot Anderson. The thing is, there are hints of how good he can be, and he's got this. Seems to have a bit of versatility in his game. You know, there's loads of candidates, but I think if we have a good season and we finish further up the league and we achieve those definitions of success that we gave at the start of the show, then I think Morgan Gibbs-White is going to be the key man in it. And you know, he's our glamour boy, he's our poster boy. And and generally over the 2 years, Morgan has added substance to the style. Right, I think he's been one of the key reasons why we're still a Premier League team after 2 very, very challenging years of struggle, and we're still here. And I think he has a lot to say in that. So I think Morgan will be the Player of the Year.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a bit of a dark horse before we find out Steve's answer. I'm going to go with Callum Hudson-Odoi, which might surprise a few people, but I just think, I don't know. I just think that he's got what it takes, and I sadly don't think he might be here for much longer. I think there's going to be interest in him naturally. He's young. He's still got a long way to go. Still a lot to prove. Don't get me wrong, but those glimpses last season we got of him, and particularly the way he can just cut inside and those goals from anywhere, I think will be crucial. So I'm going to go with a bit of a dark horse. And
getting his career back on track.
Yeah, he is.
Back on track. He's shown great character because he's had some low points in his career. And fair play to Callum. He's a good kid.
Yeah, it's good to see. Steve, who would you go for your Player of the Season?
Well, the obvious one is Gibbs-White again, but it's interesting, isn't it? There's a bit of a sort of a theme developing. We've got a lot of players who've got something to prove. Hudson-Odoi, Elanga, Gibbs-White, even Sangare, Awonyi, maybe Anderson to a degree because he'll be disappointed to have been let go. The real sort of rabbit out of the hat for me is Aina. I mean, just who on earth managed to get him on a free transfer last season? I mean, we talk about the transfer business. What a bargain! And he's the part. He's on the videos anyway. He's the party boy, isn't he? He's the joker in the back.
Yeah.
And again, I think if he's given the confidence and given a good run in the side, he'll make. Not only is he a very good defender, but he'll make lots of good contributions going forward. What's interesting to me is almost all the conversation, if we listen back to this, has been about how we're going to be going forward. And therefore, the signing of Milenkovic has been absolutely fundamental because we've got to be able to better protect Matt Sells if it is Matt Sells in goal. But I think we've got a whole team of players who've got something to prove and who therefore are going to fight harder than somebody who comes in with a huge fee and, they're the superstar. So, yeah, I mean, goodness me, it's tricky, isn't it? Gibbs-White's the obvious one. Dave's point about him being the quarterback is absolutely right because the team is built around Gibbs-White. But what happens if Gibbs-White gets injured and is out for a few games? We've now got Anderson, who, in theory, could step into that role, I think. Yeah. I mean, I've not seen him play yet, I think, but that's the sort of where the comments are heading. And that would give Anderson the opportunity to flourish. So ask us again in about 6 months' time, Max.
I will.
Don't worry. He will.
We can revisit the homework in February at the same time as all the sports writers are picking their Player of the Year.
I'll give you
as long as you don't get detention, Steve.
I'll give you the results. GCSE results.
That cell that Max is living in.
He's inside a big chimney.
Someone commented that the other day. Don't disrespect my nice brick wall. I'm still working on a new podcast background. All right. Right. I've lost my train of thought now. Let's do one to watch, which probably, I guess Anderson would be up there with one to watch for a player. Dave, you nodding is one to watch?
Yeah, I think Elliot Anderson is really interesting. He seems like he's integrated into the group really quickly. But then again, that's about the group. Come on in, mate. Be part of our setup. I think one to watch, just based on little hints from pre-season, is Eric Silva Moreira. I think he came on. I know it's only Chesterfield. No disrespect to Chesterfield, who beat Derby the following week 4-0. So let's not knock Chesterfield too much. And ran them close last night, right? But Eric Moreira came on and like, blimey, this kid's got a bit about him. Signed for only I think $1 million. And actually, our transfers, is it 15 for Anderson, 12 for Milenkovic, 3 for, Jaws from, James Bond, Carlos Miguel, he's 19 feet tall, isn't he, the skyscraper? He was 3 million. We haven't chucked massive amounts of money around. I think maybe PSR is kind of tattooed into the collective mindset of Nottingham Forest. But Moreira, when he came on against Chesterfield, and in other games he's played, has looked quite a canny little buy. And I'm going to chuck in an academy player I think could play some games as well. I think the next guy from our academy that's going to follow the likes of Yatesy and Joe Worrell and people like I think Zach Abbott is has got great potential. Seems to be, maturity beyond his years. But I think the one to watch is Anderson. But I'm going to chuck Moreira in, and I'd love to see Zach Abbott get some games. If we have a nice little Carabao Cup run. I know he came on against Grimsby the first year we played. He looked about 9 when he came on. He was so young looking. But I think Zach Abbott could be a lad with a really bright future. I think that'd be really good to see.
Yeah, interesting. You mentioned academy players. I actually gave Joe Garner a shout out, the young striker for Forest, when I was doing the 4-4-2 preview. Again, whether he will break through, it's so difficult in the Premier League given the competition, obviously. But as you mentioned there, Dave, the cup runs, chances for young players to prove themselves. Steve, who is your one to watch?
I think whoever is playing right back or right wing back, so Moreira or Nico Williams.
Yeah, shout.
Interesting. Good. Right. Let's move on to our. I like your concise answers, Steve. It makes it easy. No disrespect, Dave. Sorry.
It's Dave more time.
Yeah. True. Actually, true. Yeah.
I'm trying to rein myself in, you two. Hang on. I've got to do a class tonight. I'm trying to keep the mouth, relatively tired.
Which class is it, Dave?
Pump. I'll just leave that there. People can make up their own minds. They can visualize whatever they want to visualize. It's just called Pump, and it's a sellout, right?
Oh, God, sell out under the lights. I won't be there. Right. Predicted league finish. I've mentioned mine loads, so I will stick with it. 12th, which I've been called quite optimistic for, but I've got a good feeling everything lines up for me, so I'm going to go with 12th. Steve, your predicted finish?
13th or 14th.
13th or 14th. Okay. Dave?
So I thought you wanted a concise answer.
14th or 15th.
Well, we talked about it earlier, didn't we? So I think 13th to 14th.
Okay.
Yeah, 14th. I'm going to go one little bit lower. 14th or 15th for me, Max.
The youthful optimism in me is obviously predicting slightly higher. We talk about cup runs. Where do you predict Forest to almost get to in the FA Cup? I will say for the FA Cup, I'll say quarter-final. Dave?
Yeah, that's with a fair wind and a kind draw. Yeah, a quarter-final. And with either of them, the Carabao or the League Cup, just have no idea. I mean, I think the draw's being done tonight. For when we enter the competition in a couple of weeks. I just don't know. All I know is I'd just like us to have a little bit more. We got knocked out by Burnley at the first go last year, and then with the FA Cup, we went to the 5th round and we lost to United. Actually played all right. So, our FA Cup history in the last 2 or 3 seasons has improved a little bit. So, quarterfinals in either would be great for me. Steve, your predictions for both cups?
Yeah, I mean, I think 5th round of the FA Cup would be great because then you've won a couple of rounds. And at that stage, you're down to a smaller number of teams and it depends almost completely on the draw. Carabao Cup, I think, is perhaps more interesting. We've got a bit of history in that, haven't we, over the years? it's a tournament that perhaps clubs don't take quite as seriously. It hasn't got quite as much prestige as the FA Cup. So that starts earlier. But you can almost look at it in two runs, can't you? The Carabao Cup is sort of like before Christmas and the FA Cup is after Christmas. So I just think it'd be good to take both seriously.
Yeah.
Maybe have an opportunity for some of the academy players. I mean, where's Dale Taylor going to go in his career unless we start playing him? He's prolific at the level he's playing at. He's played for Ireland. So where does he fit in, and what opportunity is there to bring through other academy players? So the Carabao Cup for me is a first opportunity. So yeah, I'd be very happy with either. They just bring a bit of no pressure excitement to the season, don't they?
True.
Yeah, they do. Right, on to some general predictions before we finish up. So we're done with Forest for a bit. So we'll look at, Forest might still be included in these. But we begin with our Premier League top six. Steve, do you want to start us?
In no particular order. Arsenal, City. I think Villa will challenge again because they've just got a very, very good manager. I think Spurs will challenge. United, who knows? Depends whether they get their act together and what impact Ineos and the new ownership have off the pitch. Newcastle are not going to put up with another season outside challenging the top six. So it's Chelsea I wouldn't put in there. I just think there's too much going on and a new manager. And, I think they'll probably be the top of that second group of six or something. Is there a club that's going to challenge this year? I can't think of one. So I think unfortunately, I think it's the usual favourites. I'm sure I've missed somebody out there that's crucial, but anyway.
Who's going to win the league? You think that City will win it?
I think it might go right down to the end, and I just think that Arsenal might pip them this year. I'm really surprised that City's selling Alvarez. I know it was a big fee, but I think it was, as was shown last season. Haaland is a machine in terms of goal scoring, but if he has a run for 3, 4, maybe 5 games where he's not scoring, I'm not sure City have an out-and-out goal scorer. All of the players in City squad can score. They can rejig their formation, everything else to cover for that. But you do need somebody who can just get those opportunities and make them count. And Alvarez was one of those players. So I'm really puzzled at them selling Alvarez, even if it was for whatever it was, 81, 82 million quid.
Yeah. Dave, who is your Premier League top six? Because it's a funny one, isn't it? You talk about the top six all the time in the Premier League, but they really are here, and the rest of the Premier League can be down here sometimes because of the difference of the gulf of quality, if you like.
City, it's boring, but they're just such a juggernaut. It's very difficult to see them not being. It's impossible to see them not being in the top six. Although, having said that, I don't think they're as good. I didn't think they'd be as good without Gundogan, because I thought Gundogan was absolutely superb for them. But they still won the league. Lost Gundogan. Rodri, to me, Rodri's the most complete player in the whole league. Maybe one of the most complete, maybe the most complete footballer on the planet at the moment. European champions are based around Rodri. So, City, Arsenal will again be challenging, because I think Declan Rice has made them a better team. Liverpool under Slot. Hard to think they'll be as good as, Slot's got big shoes to fill there, but Liverpool will still be on the premises. I think Tottenham, I think Ange is a superb manager. I think he's a really good guy, Ange. I think Tottenham will be there. United, I don't know. I think United. And then I'm going to put Villa in the top six, but for Villa, it's a matter of managing the midweek workload. Because it's Brighton found it last year. Brighton had finished higher up the season before. Then they go into Europe, and Brighton were forced to kind of fight on more fronts than just the one, and found it difficult. And Villa have got the same. But then again, in Unai Emery, they've got a man who's won in Europe, multiple times and knows what he's doing. And he's probably, yeah, if he were to be on the market, he'd be the most sought after manager in the world, Unai Emery. I mean, his coaching's fantastic. So I think Villa. And then, as Steve says, I think Newcastle will be 7th. And then, I mean, Chelsea, they could just say, right, we've got Cole Palmer, we build a nice side round him, and we stop stop all this nonsense. You could see, Chelsea had a good end to the season last season, but again, I don't think Maresca's as good as Pochettino, and I just think Bowley's bought a football club, and he hasn't a clue about football, so I think he's their great millstone. But yeah, that's my top 6.
Yeah, Max. Sorry, I mean, I do them a terrible disservice. I forgot Liverpool in my list, and Liverpool are going to be in the top 6. I just think there's a real unpredictability this year because nobody knows quite what an Arne Slot Liverpool is going to be in comparison to the tremendous club and team that was built around Jurgen Klopp. So
and they've made no signings, made no major signings as yet. Liverpool have been the quietest club of the big guns in the transfer market this season. And actually, I come back. What Steve says about Alvarez, so surprised at that. He's a superb player, Alvarez, and I think City will miss him. So it might just compress up.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Great league, the Premier League, though. It's always fun watching the games, especially when Forest aren't involved and it doesn't massively directly affect us. It's the same when you watch the Championship football. It was great watching Burnley Luton the other night, and just being stress free and watching them.
I know there are a lot of people tuning in, Forest fans. I'm sure they thoroughly enjoyed Sheffield Wednesday against Plymouth, and watching Plymouth Argyle, weren't they marvellous? Beautifully coached, superb team.
Right, on to first manager. I've jumped one. On to Premier League bottom 3. Who are the favourites to go down? I'd say the 3 that came up. I know that sounds like a really kind of typical football journalist answer, maybe, and maybe it's a bit lazy of me, but I just think that I just think Forest did so well that first season to stay up, and we saw last season with the 3 that came up, the 3 that go down, and I just think it's going to be a repeat of that again. Dave, do you agree there?
Not totally, Max. No, I think the 3 that are coming up this time are far better than the 3 that came up last time, which means that those other teams that avoided relegation last year maybe are going to have to work that little bit harder. I think Leicester will finish bottom. Not because of the manager, because I love that guy, and we should all love that guy. He's an icon of our football club, and wish him all the very best. But I just don't think their squad is good enough to survive in this league. I mean, Keenan Dewsbury Hall, you get rid of your best player, and that's detrimental. So I think Leicester will finish bottom. I think of the 3 that come up, I think Southampton are the ones that I think will stay up. I just like Southampton. I think Russell Martin has got a good thing going there. If Armstrong can translate his Championship goal scoring form to the Premier League, which he's tried before and hasn't done, but if he can do it this time, I think he's more settled now. I think Southampton are the ones at the bottom, are the 3 coming up that I trust the most. I think Brentford are going to struggle this year. I've seen quite a lot of prediction shows saying that Brentford are going to struggle again. It's the standard of their squad. Tony is crucial to it. He seems as if he doesn't want to really stay there anymore, despite them giving him a hero's welcome after wrongdoing when we went there in January, which I thought was absolutely scandalous. So I think Brentford are going to. So I just think maybe Frank's golden touch, and Frank has been excellent at Brentford and what they've done. I just think they're going to run out of road a bit, Brentford. I think they're the one that might get taken by surprise. Oh, hang on a minute, and they did dip close to it last year. So I think Brentford are going to be going down, and I think the other one's sad to say because I think their manager is fantastic, and they're going to battle. They're going to be the Luton Town of this season. I think Ipswich Town, not to be underestimated by anybody. Delap's a good signing. Amari Hutchinson's a good player. They'll have a fantastic team spirit, and McKenna is a seriously good young, up and coming manager. But I just think Ipswich will be the feel-good. A sort of a feel-good failure, if you like Luton were last year. So I think my bottom 3 are Leicester to finish bottom, Brentford to finish 19th, and Ipswich, who I think will ruffle a few feathers, and provide some good memories, I think they'll be the other one to go down. They'll be the ones who'll be close, but not quite good enough to stay up.
Steve, any changes there, or do you agree with me or Dave?
I think Leicester will finish bottom, and that will largely be due to the fact that they're about to get, a 10, 8, 10, 12 point deduction.
I forgot that, yeah.
They've almost got no chance. They've got both hands tied behind the back before they start. Steve Cooper will make them dogged, and I wish him every success, of course, but I think Leicester are doomed from the start. I don't rate Southampton. I just don't think that they came up through the playoffs, didn't they? And I think they've got the squad that is not quite Premier League quality. And it's almost too late to do anything about that. The Ipswich, I think, for me, depends on how they get on in the first 6 games, because they're coming into the Premier League on an absolute high, having had 2 promotions. There's clearly an incredible team bond and incredible spirit around the club. I've not looked at their fixtures, but if they get stuffed, if they get stuffed a couple of times in the first 6 games and that knocks confidence, then that might damage their long-term ambitions. But I think ultimately it'll probably be the 3 that come up will go back down, and that's now because the gap between the haves and the have-nots is getting increasingly bigger. The one team I think Brentford, I think Thomas Frank's got too much about him. They'll struggle, but they'll probably struggle in the same way as we did in the last couple of years. The team for me that I think are more likely to be involved is Bournemouth, particularly having now sold Dominic Solanke, who is such a focal point for them. And, they haven't got the resources because of the size of the ground. They just haven't got the resources to go out and put everything right. Okay, they're getting whatever, I don't know what the fee is for Dominic Solanke, but some of that will
65.
go on. Okay, but what does 65 million get you nowadays? How do you replace Dominic Solanke for 65 million? You might go and find a couple of players in Europe, but for me, Bournemouth are the ones that I think will struggle this year.
Just going back to Ipswich, those opening 2 fixtures, Steve, are Liverpool at home and Manchester City away. So welcome to the Premier League, Ipswich Town.
Yeah, but but Dave, they're gonna go into that home game against Liverpool on the absolute crest of a wave, and it's a no-lose situation, because no one's going to expect them to get anything from those first 2 games. Right. So supposing on the first day of the season they get a draw against Liverpool, they're going to go to the they'll go to City. Nobody expects to get anything from City, and they probably won't. So then they go into game 3 and went, right, we've got those 2 out of the way. We've got a point on the board. That's better than we thought. Let's not worry about it because our season starts now. Sort of stuff. So who knows?
Yeah, great.
Absolutely. Right, last one before we go. First Premier League manager to be sacked. Steve, nice, concise answer for us.
Who's the manager of Bournemouth now?
Iraola.
I think they're the ones that are going to struggle early on. And I think the balance between actual results and expectation will have the greatest difference at Bournemouth. So I think he's the one who's probably under most threat.
Sadly, I think Steve Cooper.
Yeah.
There are already mutterings about Steve at Leicester, so I think it could be Steve. It could be Ten Hag. If United don't get a glittering first 4 or 5 matches, Ten Hag's perennially under pressure, and then our guy. If we get nothing, say from Bournemouth, Southampton, and Wolves, then Nuno is going to have a right weight on his shoulders. So, but I think it'd be Steve. I think there are some that are bomb-proof: Glasner, Emery, Howe.
Do you think Glasner's bomb-proof at Crystal Palace?
I do. Yeah,
I don't think at all. I think he might be in there. I think he might be in the mix. I mean, they've sold Elise. They've got Sam Johnston apparently is on his way out. They're going to rely on a couple of other players that they've got from last season, but without Elise and Eze playing across midfield. And Steve Parish is not going to stand for any messing around, is he? So I don't think Glasner's bomb-proof at all. But what do we know?
Yeah, exactly. He'll come back. He'll come back in 6 months, Steve. He'll have marked our papers, Professor Hayes.
Hayes, yeah.
Marked our professor, and he'll go.
Remember my name.
Yeah, you two, what you like. I mean, how can I answer questions? I can't even remember your name, Max. So I'm done for.
Yeah. Yes, right. I was going to say, Dave, and then you can return the favour and we could do like a Garibaldi Red PT session. You could train me up and stuff. Try and get me in Yeah. Yeah. Right. That's enough, I reckon, of the Garibaldi Red podcast, our season preview. It all kicks off soon. We have got a chat with Robbie Earnshaw coming out on Friday, all being well. So me and Robbie will be talking about predictions for the season and whether he will agree with you, Dave or Steve, on your predictions. I won't be giving Robbie the homework I gave you two, though.
Why not?
Assured.
Why not?
It's a different type of podcast, that's all I'll say. Right, so that will be coming out on Friday, and then we'll of course be back on the Monday to review Forest's game, but we might be back the Saturday as well after the game. That all depends on what time I get back home after Forest's first game at the City Ground. Nice to be at home as well to kick off the season. That's the first time in a while. So Dave, Steve, thank you both, and I'm sure we'll see you there on Saturday. If you enjoyed the podcast, give us a like, share and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us across Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We will see you very soon. From all three of us, come on you Reds.